Coming up on this Monday edition of Newsline at Noon, South Korea urges North Korea to reverse its sudden cancellation of scheduled reunions of separated family members, but Pyongyang blames Seoul for forcing it to make its decision. The Kenyan military says it has taken control of most of the Nairobi mall, where at least 68 people were killed by al-Qaeda-linked militants at the weekend. Plus, Angela Merkel wins a third term as German Chancellor. But Merkel's Christian Democrats will need to seek a new coalition with their leftist rivals, despite the party's best showing in 20 years. These stories and more on Newsline at Noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at Noon. I'm Choi Yuson in Seoul.
Fantastic to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Inter-Korean relations took a turn for the worse over the weekend after North Korea abruptly announced it was postponing this week's reunions for families separated since the Korean War.
Pyongyang blames Seoul for the sudden cancellation, while Seoul urged Pyongyang to resume the family meetings. Our Kim Young-gil has the latest.
North Korea has blamed South Korea's confrontational policy for its abrupt decision to postpone the family reunions. The communist state unilaterally pulled the plug on the event, which would have seen family members from the North and South meeting from this Wednesday until next Monday. The two Koreas had been in the final stages of preparing the reunions. Both sides had exchanged the final list of 196 candidates to be reunited at the Mount Kumgang Resort in North Korea. South Korea's unification ministry said Saturday that the postponement of family reunions cannot be justified by any means.
North Korea should not ridicule South Korea by breaking promises. North Korea should promptly resume preparations to hold the reunion event to cure the pain and scars of these separated families.
Pyongyang accuses Seoul of abusing inter-Korean negotiations as a means to seek a showdown with the communist state, and the responsibility for the postponement lies with the South.
South Korea has committed a serious crime against our people for not acknowledging our sincerity in dealing with the separated family reunions.
North Korean watchers say Pyongyang's decision to put off the family reunions is due to Seoul's rigid stance on the nuclear issue and Seoul's passive attitude towards resuming cross-border tours to the North Mount Kumgang Resort. The North had postponed the planned negotiations with the South on October 2nd on restarting cross-border tours to Mount Kumgang. Seoul, however, has made it clear that the postponement of the family reunions won't affect operations at the recently reopened Kaesong Industrial Complex. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
And it goes without saying that the South Koreans who were expecting to see their relatives again after all these years are absolutely devastated by the postponement. Many family members, like 85-year-old Hong Shin-ja from Seoul, had been mentally preparing themselves to see their loved ones again for the first time in more than 60 years. Hong was hoping to meet her now 82-year-old sister and had readied gifts to give her before her hopes were so cruelly crushed.
It's been more than 60 years since I've seen my younger sister. We are both old now, so if we don't get to see each other in the coming days, I feel like we'll never see each other again.
Hong first registered with the Red Cross to meet her sister in the early 1980s, but was not selected for the reunions until this year. More than 72,000 South Koreans are on the Red Cross list, waiting to meet their long-lost relatives again one day. A railroad that connects North Korea and Russia has reopened after the completion of a 5-year renovation project. A ceremony was held in the North's port city of Najin on Sunday to celebrate the completion of the railroad that connects Najin, located in North Hamgyong province, and Kasan in Russia's far east. The 54-kilometer railroad is expected to be used for carrying export goods such as Russian coal to North Korea and will later be connected to a railroad running from Najin to China for deliveries of Chinese cargo. Back here in the South, lawmakers are back in Parliament and are busy drawing up action plans for the coming weeks based on the public sentiment they observed while visiting their constituencies during the Chuseok holiday last week. The main opposition Democratic Party convened an all-member meeting at the National Assembly earlier today. Party leader Kim Han-gil said his party will set up a 24-hour headquarters within Parliament so DP lawmakers can focus on legislative activities, including the upcoming audit of government offices. Kim also said he will tour the nation to expand the outdoor campaign in protest against allegations the spy agency meddled in last year's presidential election. The ruling Saenuri Party will convene a meeting of its lawmakers this afternoon to discuss a strategy.
The US Federal Reserve surprised investors last week by postponing the start of the wind-down of its massive monetary stimulus. But with the scale-back still looming, Korea is taking the necessary steps to protect itself. The nation's finance minister has vowed to take both short and long-term countermeasures to buffer the Korean economy against potential repercussions. Our Yulian reports.
Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok has stressed the country must keep its guard up against the Federal Reserve's plans to wind down its stimulus program. In an interview with Seoul-based Yonhap news agency Sunday, Hyun said the Fed's decision last week to put off winding down its stimulus until it sees more improvement in the economy is an evident indication of the tapering that is to come. Hyun said he will implement a two-track strategy, short-term countermeasures to ensure macroeconomic stability in the face of a shock, and long-term countermeasures to strengthen the nation's economic structure. More specifically, Hyun said he will aim to keep the current account surplus at an appropriate level and continue to manage household debt and short-term foreign debt. With fears of a slowdown in China subsiding, the minister said Korea faces fewer outside risks for the remainder of the year. Nevertheless, Vice Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho and officials of the Bank of Korea and the Financial Supervisory Service on Sunday agreed uncertainties surrounding the U.S. stimulus could remain until early next year. Yurian, Arirang News.
Korea's debt-to-GDP ratio hit a record high in the second quarter of this year. The Bank of Korea says the ratio of the total amount owed by the nation's households, companies as well as the government reached just shy of 290% of Korea's economic output over the past 1 year. The central bank says this is about 3 times more than the nation's economic scale. Korea's debt-to-GDP ratio was in the 220% range in 2003, and it surpassed the 270% mark at the end of 2008, at the height of the global financial crisis. The demand for hybrid vehicles in Korea is on the up and up, and foreign car makers are starting to make inroads into the local market. The Korea Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade said Monday that foreign car makers accounted for 20% of all hybrid cars sold in the country in the first half of this year. Toyota said 24% of the cars it sold in Korea were hybrids, while Lexus said almost half of its sales were of hybrid vehicles. The state-run institute says demand for green cars will likely increase in the near future, and added that local car manufacturers should prepare themselves for the change.
For your fill of Korean and international news, join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime.
Newsline at Noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
One Korean national is among the 68 people that were killed in an attack on a Kenyan shopping center by the al-Qaeda-linked military group based in Somalia. Local police say most of the hostages that were holed up in the mall have been rescued, and every effort is being made to bring the matter to a swift conclusion. Kim Min-ji has this report.
The Kenyan military said late Sunday that they have rescued most of the remaining hostages held by al-Qaeda-linked militants inside an upscale shopping mall in Nairobi and have taken control of most parts of the building. Officials say security forces launched a major assault to end the two-day siege, and all efforts were underway to bring the matter to a speedy conclusion. Gunmen opened fire at the Westgate shopping mall on Saturday around noon local time, killing at least 68 people and injuring over 170. Eyewitnesses said the gunmen threw grenades and fired indiscriminately at shoppers.
We tried escaping and they threw a grenade, and the sharp particles entered me into my hand and my leg. There were very many people who were injured.
A Korean citizen is among the dead. Seoul's foreign ministry says 38-year-old Kang Moon-hee died from gunshot wounds. Officials say Kang had moved to Kenya with her British husband, who was currently recovering at a nearby hospital. Another Korean citizen who was initially reported missing has been confirmed safe. The ministry has condemned the brutal attack and pledged to provide assistance. Somali militant group al-Shabaab has said the deaths were retribution for Kenyan involvement in Somalia. The international community has denounced the attack. The U.S. State Department has called it a senseless act of violence. The United Nations, France, and Britain also condemned the attack in the strongest possible terms and have offered to provide necessary assistance. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Over in Pakistan, a suicide bombing outside a church in the northwestern city of Peshawar has killed at least 78 people and left more than 120 wounded in what has been called one of the deadliest attacks against the country's Christian minority. The attack occurred Sunday as worshippers were coming out of All Saints Church when two explosions erupted in the middle of the crowd. A group linked to the Pakistani Taliban Jundullah has claimed responsibility for the bombing, which they said was carried out in retaliation for U.S. drone strikes in the northwestern part of the country. The group has reportedly said it would continue to target non-Muslims until the U.S. put an end to the strikes in Pakistan. The latest strike occurred on Sunday when missiles were fired into a militant compound in the North Waziristan tribal area, killing 6 suspected militants. Russia has accused the West of trying to use the chemical weapons deal with Syria to force through a UN resolution threatening force against the Assad regime. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Sunday that the U.S., France, and Britain don't see the deal as a chance to save the world from significant quantities of chemical weapons, but as an opportunity to launch a military strike on Syria. The Russian minister also said Moscow was willing to send troops into Syria to protect and observe UN chemical weapons inspectors as they begin to remove the weapons. The U.S. and Russia agreed earlier this month to bring Syria's chemical weapons under international control and destroy all of the regime's stockpiles by the middle of next year. German Chancellor Angela Merkel's enduring popularity has spurred her into a third term in office. Despite Sunday's resounding victory, her Christian Democrats fell slightly short of securing an absolute majority, meaning Merkel will have to cozy up to another party as her current coalition partners have been all but wiped off the political map. Kim Ji-yeon has more.
Angela Merkel has won a third term as German Chancellor after her Christian Democrat Party polled strongly in Sunday's general elections. Merkel urged her party to celebrate what she called a super result, as official polls show her Christian Democrats and its Bavarian sister party won 41.5% of the vote. But Merkel may be forced to seek a grand coalition with the center-left Social Democrats since her Free Democrat partner secured less than the 5% of the votes needed to enter parliament. The Social Democrats won 25.7% of the votes and the Greens over 8%. The ball is in Merkel's court.
We will do all we can in the next 4 years together to make them successful years for Germany. We will now wait for the election results. It is too early to say how we will proceed.
If Merkel is to rule alone without a coalition, she would have a tough battle against an upper house dominated by left-leaning parties, like the Social Democrats and the Greens. This would make Merkel more vulnerable to Eurosceptics, who want to spoil her austerity-focused approach to struggling Eurozone members. Merkel is said to be the longest-serving female head of government if she fulfills her third term, surpassing Margaret Thatcher, who was British Prime Minister for 11 years. Merkel, who grew up in East Germany, became the first female German Chancellor in 2005. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Disgraced Chinese politician Bo Xilai has been sentenced to life in prison after a local court found him guilty of abuse of power, corruption and bribery. The former party chief of Chongqing, who fiercely pleaded his innocence throughout the trial, has 10 days to appeal his conviction, but analysts say he has next to no chance of overturning the court's decision. Bo was sentenced to life in prison on bribery charges, 15 years for embezzlement and 7 years for abuse of power. All his personal wealth has also been confiscated. Bo was stripped of his position last year amid a scandal which saw his wife convicted for the murder of a British businessman. At least 20 people have been killed in southern China as Typhoon Usaki, which was dubbed as one of the strongest storms on Earth, slammed into the Chinese mainland. China's state-run Xinhua news agency says the deaths were reported on China's southern coast, including 13 in Guangdong province. Gale-force winds of over 180 kilometers an hour and heavy downpours forced thousands to evacuate their homes, while authorities deployed 50,000 disaster relief workers to the hardest-hit areas. Usaki, which means rabbit in Japanese, killed 2 people in the Philippines and caused chaos across Hong Kong, throwing flight schedules into disarray and flooding many areas. The number of people in Korea complaining of carpal tunnel syndrome is on the rise, particularly among women in their 40s and 50s. Our Park Ji-won reports on this painful and often debilitating condition.
Hwang Jong-ja has felt a tingling in her left hand since early this year. Her fingers feel numb, making it difficult to grab something, and the pain can be so unbearable that she often has trouble sleeping.
It hurts so much sometimes that it makes me cry, and I can feel the pain moving up to my shoulders.
Hwang has carpal tunnel syndrome, which causes pain and numbness in the wrist and hand because of nerve compression in the wrist. The number of patients in Korea suffering from the disorder has increased by 60% in recent years, going from 100,000 in 2008 to 160,000 last year. Moreover, 8 out of every 10 patients are women and half are in their 40s and 50s. There's speculation that the syndrome could be caused by repetitive movements, such as typing, but experts say the cause is not clear and could involve both genetic and environmental factors.
Many studies indicate that women going through menopause have a higher risk for carpal tunnel syndrome than men do because of hormonal changes at that time in a woman's life.
People with rheumatoid arthritis, diabetes, and hypothyroidism may also have a higher risk for carpal tunnel, and medical authorities advise people with these diseases to take extra precautions in order to protect themselves against the syndrome. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, traditional ginseng wines have been enjoyed for generations here in Korea, dating all the way back to the Baekje dynasty some 1,300 years ago. The alcoholic spirit is usually a popular gift item during the Chuseok holiday, which just passed, of course. However, the industry's retail success has been on the decline in recent years. Our Paul Lee shows us what ginseng businesses are doing to try and spark commercial revival.
Here in the heart of Korea's Kumsan County in South Chuncheong Province lies a factory dedicated to producing one of the nation's most iconic spirits. Imsanju, or ginseng liquor, has been called the elixir of life for its many medicinal properties and refreshing taste. However, a lack of demand has caused production lines to come to a standstill. Seasonal sales have dropped by some 70% compared to last year. Nationally recognized Korean food grandmaster and company president Kim Chang-soo says he's deeply concerned about the commercial slump.
It's no exaggeration that things have been very difficult lately. Compared to the past, our factory has become smaller and looks like it's been reduced in half.
Kim has been in the ginseng liquor business for over 30 years and was one of the commercial pioneers of the product. But due to excess stocks, his distilleries remain silent. Makers of traditional red ginseng liquors have also been suffering economic difficulties, since their expensive ingredients take years to age and are only bought domestically.
There have been many difficulties, higher state taxes on mainstream consumers being one. Rather than just providing additional subsidies on raw materials, I think it would be best if the government took into account a wider range of issues.
Local governments have been looking for ways to support the industry, which boasts deep cultural roots.
It's true that sales of traditional ginseng and red ginseng liquor have been in decline. However, moving forward, national policies in Korea should be taken to promote ginseng liquor. I think that's something that can be done to help this market survive.
The ginseng master brewers hope they can recapture the public's passion for this long-cherished drink, with cooperative efforts from manufacturers and the government. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Why don't we now get an update on the weather with our Lee standing by at the Weather Center. Good afternoon, Lee.
Good afternoon, guys. Well, I hope you had a wonderful Chuseok holiday and made a wish on the glorious moonlight we had. Today is autumnal equinox known as Chubun here in Korea.
Chubun. It's Chubun already, which does it mean that we're already halfway through the fall season?
That's right.
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem like we're halfway through the fall season.
No.
It's still pretty summery out there.
Right,
and the weather, I have to say, doesn't feel that really different from August. It's still very sunny and extremely warm.
Well, you're right on that, Mark. And today should be the warmest day of this week because we have rain in the forecast nationwide on Tuesday, which will make things a lot cooler than what we've been seeing lately. Afternoon highs will drop into the low 20s across the nation after the rain, and it doesn't look like temperature will return to the upper 20s anymore. The rain will begin in the central region starting early in the morning on Tuesday, then let up in the evening, and the rain will hit the southern provinces starting Tuesday afternoon, then go away on Wednesday morning. And as we can see here, the morning lows and afternoon highs will be 5 to 7 degrees lower than today by the end of the week, so we've got to prepare for these upcoming chilly days. Well, right now we have a few passing clouds, but other than that, it's looking clear and it's likely to remain mostly sunny throughout the day. Again, today should be the last day of summery weather, and the afternoon highs will be slightly higher than yesterday. So let's take a look at those numbers. Now, the capital, Daegu and Busan will all rise to 28 degrees Celsius. That's 82 degrees in Fahrenheit, and afternoon highs in Gwangju will be 2 degrees higher at 30. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju and Daejeon will get up into the high 20s, while Mount Kumgang stays on the cooler side. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me today. Enjoy your lunch break and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Now back to Mark and Yusun in the studio.
Well, thank you ever so much, as always, Jion, for your wonderful weather report there. I'm very glad it's still sunny and warm outside. But those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Mark and I will be back tomorrow here on Newsline at Noon.